A new and dangerous chapter has opened in the Middle East. The long-simmering conflict between Israel and Iran has erupted into direct military confrontation, pulling the region toward a wider war. The first major move came from Israel, which launched a series of unprecedented airstrikes deep inside Iranian territory. These attacks were not small, they were a significant and calculated escalation aimed at critical targets. The world watched as reports of explosions began to surface from several Iranian cities. This was not a proxy battle fought through other groups. This was a direct hit from one nation's military against another, a line that had rarely been crossed so openly before. The Israeli government, led by its prime minister, chose this moment to act decisively. The targets of the Israeli strikes were carefully selected to deliver a powerful message and inflict maximum damage on Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure. The attacks hit sensitive locations, including sites linked to Iran's controversial nuclear program. But the most shocking development was the targeting of Iran's top military leadership. In these strikes, Israel killed two of the most powerful men in the Iranian armed forces. General Hossein Salami, the commander-in-chief of the influential Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, was among those killed. Alongside him, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, who was Iran's highest-ranking military officer, was also eliminated. The loss of these two figures at once is a devastating blow to the Iranian regime's command structure. The timing of Israel's attack seems connected to a shifting landscape in the Middle East. For years, tensions have been building, particularly since the start of the Gaza war in October 2023. Israeli officials may have seen a unique window of opportunity to act. One key factor is the recent fall of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, a close ally of Iran. His removal has weakened the network of Iranian-backed forces in the region, including Hezbollah in Lebanon. This change in regional power dynamics may have convinced Israeli leaders that Iran was more vulnerable than before, making it the right time to strike directly at the heart of its military and nuclear ambitions. The world reacted with immediate alarm to the news of the Israeli attacks. Global leaders feared that this bold move would inevitably trigger a massive retaliation from Iran, a country that has long vowed to respond to any direct aggression. The international community has grown accustomed to the shadow war between these two adversaries, a conflict fought with assassinations, cyber attacks, and proxy battles. But this direct, large-scale military operation changed the rules of the game entirely. The question on everyone's mind was not if Iran would respond, but how and when. The deliberate killing of its top generals on its own soil was an insult that the Iranian government could not ignore. The Iranian response was not long in coming, and it was as massive as many had feared. In a powerful show of force, Iran launched a counterstrike of its own, unleashing hundreds of missiles toward Israel. This was a direct, state-to-state attack, a retaliation for the Israeli strikes that had killed its top commanders. The skies over Israel lit up as air defense systems worked furiously to intercept the incoming threats. Explosions were reported in major cities including Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, sending residents scrambling for shelter. Iran's foreign minister issued a stern warning declaring that Israel would deeply regret its actions. This was Iran making a clear statement: an attack on its soil would be met with overwhelming force. The weapons used in this exchange highlight the advanced military capabilities of both nations. Israel's initial attack likely involved sophisticated aircraft and precision-guided munitions to hit specific high-value targets while minimizing broader collateral damage. In its retaliation, Iran deployed a massive barrage of ballistic missiles, a cornerstone of its military arsenal. These powerful weapons are designed to travel long distances and strike with significant force. The scale of the launch, involving hundreds of missiles at once, was intended to overwhelm Israel's renowned air defense systems, such as the Iron Dome and David's Sling. The sheer number of projectiles fired created a terrifying spectacle and a severe test for Israeli defenses. The human toll of this escalating conflict is a growing concern. While Israel's advanced defense network managed to intercept many of the incoming Iranian missiles, some inevitably got through. Reports from Israel confirmed damage to infrastructure and a number of civilian injuries. On the Iranian side, the initial Israeli strikes resulted in significant casualties, most notably the deaths of Generals Salami and Bagheri, but also other military personnel. As the fighting continues, civilians in both countries find themselves on the front lines, living under the constant threat of sirens and explosions. The fear and uncertainty are taking a heavy psychological toll on millions of people caught in the crossfire. This direct military exchange marks a dangerous new phase in the long-standing rivalry between Iran and Israel. For decades, their conflict has been waged indirectly through allied groups, covert operations, and political maneuvering. Now, that shadow war has burst into the open. The attacks represent the most significant direct military confrontation between the two regional powers in history. This shift from indirect to direct conflict raises the stakes enormously. It increases the risk of miscalculation and further escalation, potentially leading to a full-blown regional war that could draw in other countries and have devastating consequences for the entire world. The old rules no longer seem to apply. The United States, a key ally of Israel, is now in a delicate and difficult position. President Donald Trump has made it clear that America stands with Israel, stating that the United States, of course, supports its partner's right to defend itself. However, his administration is also trying to prevent the situation from spiraling into a catastrophic regional war. President Trump has signaled a preference for a diplomatic solution over a wider conflict, saying, "I'd much prefer an agreement." This reveals a careful balancing act, supporting an ally without being drawn into a direct military confrontation with Iran. The White House is walking a fine line, offering support while urging restraint. In response to the escalating crisis, the United States has taken concrete steps to protect its personnel and interests in the region while defining the limits of its support for Israel. The administration has informed Israel that while it may provide intelligence and defensive support, it will not participate in any offensive assistance for further strikes on Iran. At the same time, the United States has partially evacuated diplomats from its embassy in Baghdad and authorized the voluntary departure of military family members from the Middle East. These actions show that Washington is taking the threat of a wider conflict very seriously and preparing for the worst-case scenario. President Trump has also sent a direct and ominous message to Iran's leaders, tying the current military crisis to the stalled nuclear negotiations. He issued a stark warning, urging Tehran to agree to a new nuclear deal before there is nothing left. This statement serves as both an offer and a threat. It suggests that a diplomatic path is still open, but it also implies that continued defiance could lead to devastating consequences for Iran. The president's words are designed to pressure Iran's supreme leader, who recently rejected a United States proposal, to return to the negotiating table before the window for a peaceful resolution closes for good. The international community is watching the American response closely. The United States is the only global power with enough influence to potentially de-escalate the crisis. Allies like the United Kingdom have issued their own warnings, particularly about new threats to commercial shipping in the vital waterways of the region. The actions and statements coming from Washington are critical in shaping the next steps for all parties involved. President Trump's dual approach of supporting Israel while simultaneously pushing for a diplomatic off-ramp with Iran will be a crucial factor in determining whether this crisis can be contained or if it will explode into a much larger and more destructive war. The recent fighting has cast a dark shadow over the future of nuclear diplomacy with Iran. Just as this crisis erupted, a sixth round of nuclear negotiations between the United States and Iran was scheduled to take place in Oman. These talks were seen as a critical opportunity to revive a deal that would limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Now, with missiles flying, the fate of these negotiations is in serious jeopardy. It is highly uncertain whether Iranian diplomats will be willing to sit down with American officials while their country is engaged in direct military conflict with a key United States ally, making a peaceful solution seem more distant than ever. The timing of this crisis is particularly troubling because it follows a major international rebuke of Iran's nuclear activities. On June 12, 2025, just before the fighting began, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, passed a resolution censuring Iran. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the IAEA declared that Iran was in breach of its non-proliferation obligations. Iran responded with defiance, rejecting the resolution and defiantly announcing plans to open a third uranium enrichment plant. This move further heightened tensions and demonstrated Iran's unwillingness to cooperate, setting a grim backdrop for the military escalation that followed. The central fear for the world is that this conflict could push Iran to accelerate its pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Israeli officials have long argued that a military strike might be necessary to prevent Iran from acquiring the bomb. They are particularly concerned about deeply buried facilities like Fordow, which are difficult to destroy. However, many analysts worry that attacking Iran could have the opposite effect. A major military confrontation could convince Iran's leaders that they need a nuclear deterrent to guarantee their survival, pushing them to abandon all restraints and race toward building a weapon. This would create a nightmare scenario for global security. Ultimately, this conflict between Iran and Israel is not just a regional dispute, it has profound implications for the entire world. A full-scale war would disrupt global energy supplies as much of the world's oil passes through the region. It could trigger a massive refugee crisis and destabilize neighboring countries. Most critically, it could lead to a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, one of the most volatile regions on the planet. This is why leaders around the globe are calling for calm and de-escalation. The fate of the nuclear talks and the fragile peace of the world now hang precariously in the balance.